Hey, what's up, beautiful friends? This is Christopher with the hopezy.life, and I wanted to start a new thing where I sort of randomly go into scripture, just kind of flip to a page, and then, I don't know, see what kind of insights might come to me and share some thoughts and maybe spark a discussion as far as the thoughts that I have and the insights that I take from it. So, what I've got here are my Bible. And then I have, as I've mentioned, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so I've got the Book of Mormon, Doctrine and Covenants, and Pearl of Great Price. So first, let's start with the Holy Bible, okay? So we're going to just take random page. And we're going to go for the New Testament here. So, that's the topical guide. Hold on. Let's make sure I got the right pages to choose from. And then we will, what is there? There we go, okay. There's Matthew. Okay, find the beginning of Matthew. Okay, so, New Testament. And do this, and then this. Okay, so, topical guide. Well, here, let's just go into it. So, fruitful. Genesis 1:22, also Moses 2:22, and Abram 4:22. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful." 9:1, God blessed Noah, "Be fruitful and multiply." 17:6, I will make thee exceedingly fruitful. 35:11, be fruitful and multiply. 41:52, God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land. Leviticus 26:9, have respect unto you and make you fruitful. Isaiah 32:15, wilderness, be a fruitful field. Jerusalem 23:3, remnant shall be fruitful and increase. Acts 14:17 gave us rain from heaven and fruitful seasons. So, now that wasn't scripture itself, but I think that might be a good place to start, and then we'll pull from the actual scripture. But I like the guides, I like the analysis that countless scholars, theologians, ordinary folks like you and I have done to gain insights into what these words really mean. Because, as we know, letters are symbols, right? They represent an aspect of sound, a ka, an ah, an these types of things, right? And so, because my mind is not your mind, and your mind is not my mind, we have to find a way in order for us to communicate with each other. And that's what the tool of language is. Now, as I've mentioned many times, we don't actually think in words. We don't actually think in words, because language is simply a paradigm through which we can communicate. And this is why we have completely different styles of language. Now, there's kind of classes of languages that are similar. There's a lot of cognates with Spanish and English, for example. But Mandarin is completely different than English. Sanskrit, completely different than English. We can look into, every single language is completely different. Well, not every single language is completely different, but based on the peoples and how long those peoples were isolated from the other peoples, you have the differences of the language. Now, as the peoples spread to other lands, you then begin getting synthesis of these languages, and then they morph and they merge and everything like that, because each of us is unique. And because each of us is unique, we each have a different spin that we put on things. You might be a silly little Billy. You might be a squirrel dude. You might be hip to the hop. I don't know what it is. For my entire life, I've always had kind of this unique vibe where I've coined various little terms. And part of it is because of one of the aspects of my cognition, which many people label as dyslexic. I don't process language linearly. And as a result, because I don't process language linearly, I sort of have an outside the box perspective and ability to utilize it. Now, dyslexia, I believe roughly 20% of the population is dyslexic. And let's say this. Obviously, we're all familiar with evolution. And evolution is about, it's mate selecting for survival, right? So for our population to have roughly 20% dyslexics in it, there must be some reason for that. And so we'll get into that in another day, but I wanted to just point that out. Now, all of these instances of being fruitful and multiplying within the Bible, why are they there? Well, I think they're there because God the Father is a provider, but not just a provider of what we need, but a provider of abundance, right? An exceedingly, astonishingly abundant provider of everything that we need. Now, because God provides everything that we need, He encourages us to go and be fruitful and multiply and to understand that scarcity is not real. Our God is abundance. The world will try to tell you that there's a limited amount of everything. But what do we know about the universe? Maybe there's a limited amount of something in your neck of the woods. But if we go across the globe, let's say, for example, maybe you're in Wisconsin, where I grew up, and you don't have any palm trees. There's none. But maybe in Hawaii, and there's an abundance of palm trees. But even in Hawaii, there's a countable number of palm trees. But what if you took those palm trees and you brought them elsewhere? What if you get outside of Earth? We'll say, for example, on Earth, gold, which was one of the most valuable resources on the planet, still is, right? It's finite. That's part of what makes it valuable. There's a limited supply of gold on Earth. But what if we start looking into outside of Earth? Now, we know we've already found various space objects, a planet made of diamond, for example. Diamonds, they're a valuable thing on Earth. Now, there's a whole, diamonds are intentionally made scarce to increase value and da-da-da-da-da. But my point being is that the things that are scarce on Earth are not scarce in the universe. And based on science's understanding of the universe, it is ever expanding. What does this mean? It's infinite. It's abundant, right? There is no lack. There is no scarcity. It's simply a matter of recognizing and understanding how to experience that abundance. Now, we certainly can experience lack, and we can experience scarcity, and we can feel small as a result. But the key to getting past that is by understanding that the material world pulls us down, while the spiritual world pulls us up. Okay? Because we exist across multiple planes at the same time. We're a interdimensional being, right? And the point of your life, the goal of your life, is to experience and understand these different planes or these different dimensions, okay? Say material, mental, spiritual plane, just to keep a kind of a simple model. And so as you get stretched, there's going to be strain, right? We've all stretched, we've all felt kind of that, that's a little tight, right? But here's the good thing, right? What does stretching do for you? As you stretch through that tightness, you then get loose. You then get relaxed. Okay? Now, as you get loose and as you get relaxed, it's easier to just kind of be in a flow state and just kind of feel good in the environment, have the most fun that you could possibly be having, living your highest excitement, and everything just kind of is easy, right? The smiles come more naturally. People treat you better. Good things just seem to kind of happen. You end up being lucky. Now, this is why God tells us to be fruitful and multiply, is because the more we multiply, the more abundant the universe becomes. Because each of us has this amazing thing called human potential. Every single problem humanity has ever faced through our entire existence has been solved by the utilization and development of human potential. When you're stuck in survival mode, when you are sort of trapped in the material world, it is easy to feel stuck, feel in a prison, and not want to multiply. You want to shrink. And so you make your world small in order to protect yourself. Now, by making your world small, there can be safety, there can be security, there can be comfort, right? You can feel safe. But ultimately, you're going to be lacking fulfillment. You may lack purpose. And you're going to be dealing with different mental issues, maybe anxieties, depressions, things of this nature. It is by understanding that by multiplication, we increase, and through increase, we have more. What these messages are telling us is to ignore the false evidence appearing real, aka fear, and go multiply. There's nothing to be scared of. You don't have to be afraid of making yourself bigger, of having a bigger life. You don't have to worry about being insecure, about being hurt, about being harmed, because you are an anti-fragile being. What do I mean? What is anti-fragile? It means you cannot be broken. Kintsugi is a Japanese art form where they use gold, platinum, silver, lacquer to mend broken pottery. What this is, and so essentially what it's doing is it's taking the original pottery. This is good, right? This is wonderful clay pot. And now it's broken, put back together in this fashion, and now it is better. That's what the point of that art form is to illustrate. And we all know this for our own personal lives. We've all gone through trials and challenges and hurdles that we've overcome up to now. Maybe you're currently in a challenge or a difficult time, and you're trying to figure out how to get through it, but you've made it through every single challenge of your life up to this point. And each of those challenges, so long as you've integrated them and properly overcame them, has developed your character. It has made you a better person because you've learned lessons that you otherwise wouldn't learn if you were not, challenged in those ways. Now, the ways that we get sort of stretched and challenged, they vary in specificity, but from a generalized human experience perspective, they're universal. We all go through the same heartbreak, grief, joy, excitement, love. We all experience the same things on that fundamental level. But again, it's the specificity and we'll just leave it at the specificity for this point. So I guess let's look into the New Testament and get some actual scripture and see if it coincides with what we've been talking about now. I'm not entirely sure which section I need to get to. So I'm going to go right there nope, that's topical guide. Okay. Okay, there we go. And then, so we're going to go in Acts and here. Okay, so Acts chapter 17, verse 6. Or excuse me, chapter 18, verse 6. And when they opposed themselves and blasphemed, he shook his raiment and said unto them, Your blood be upon your own heads. I am clean. From henceforth I will go into the Gentiles. Okay, so this chapter is Paul being rejected by the Gentiles, or excuse me, by the Jews, and then going to the Gentiles. Now, the Jewish people were the chosen people of the time. And as the chosen people, I shouldn't have said at the time. The Jews were the chosen people. And as the chosen people, they had ultimately developed a rigid structure of understanding what that meant. And because they had a rigid understanding of what that meant, they rejected what Paul was saying. And so what Paul did is he went out into the world to interact with those that were not Jewish, the Gentiles. And in doing so, what he's able to accomplish, or what he's able to do, is spread the good news, to spread the gospel, to really start Christianity. Christ didn't start Christianity, right? Christ was Jewish, and he taught, and then that developed ultimately over time into Christianity. But Paul was, in a sense, who started Christianity, okay? Now, what is the benefit, or what is the purpose of this in relation to being fruitful and multiplying? And we can look into Israel as far as where, the nations that came forth, Abraham, right? The son of Abraham. And with this spreading into nations, being fruitful and multiplying, by the Jewish people creating this division between them and the Gentiles, right? Creating that dichotomy, it's limiting the ability to be fruitful and multiply. Because what you're having is, while the Jewish folks, as the chosen people, would embrace the be fruitful and multiply, the Gentiles would not. So therefore, you have the entirety of humanity where one component is doing as the Lord instructs throughout the Bible, and the other component is not. They might accidentally or unconsciously do so, but they're not doing it with intention. And this is a key that I guess isn't, it might, we'll dive into specifics at some point, but the key is intention. The key is conscious versus unconscious. We've all, as we go through life, we've done things that we were consciously aware of, and we've done things that we were unconsciously aware of. Maybe we accidentally hurt somebody without even realizing it, because we just weren't aware enough of ourselves and our actions, and aware enough of the individual that we were interacting with and how they were affecting them. And as a result, that person was hurt. These are unconscious actions because, well, and on the same hand too, people do willingly, consciously choose to hurt others. That's an aspect of this world that we live in is tragedy and malice, right? Bad things happen for no good reason. And bad things happen because people want to do bad things. So how do we overcome this, and why is that even the case? Why does that exist? Well, again, it goes down to dichotomy or dualism, right? When when you have anything like, left and right, up, down, black, white, light, dark, these dichotomies, what you're doing is you're distorting reality, because everything is interconnected with everything else. We know that, for example, the air that we breathe is roughly 21% oxygen. If it was 22% oxygen, what do you think happens? We all die. What do you think about the constants that we find? Pi, the golden ratio, Fibonacci sequence, things like this. Are these simply by chance? Is this an arbitrary occurrence, or is this a signal pointing to an intelligent design here? Now, maybe I'm getting a little bit off topic. It's a little bit late at night as I'm recording this, so I probably need to get a little bit of sleep. But with this dualistic understanding, that's not what the universe is. That's not what reality is. And so in order to gain a holistic understanding, we have to eliminate division. And by eliminating division, we fulfill what God has called us to do, which is to be fruitful and multiply, right? Because division and multiplication, that's another, it's an inversion, right? They're the same but opposite, right? It's moving into that perspective. Now, in order to, going back to sort of this 3-layer model of the planes of existence as far as like spiritual, mental, material, in order to understand the material world, you need division. You need to put things into smaller and smaller pieces in order to understand them. But in order to grasp the spiritual world, you need to conceptualize larger and larger things so that you can know them. And it's by doing both, the multiplication and the division, that we can recognize holistic truth and put everything together. Okay? Now, I say this, and I am going to do this video series because the world's in a rough shape right now. There's a whole lot of people that are having a real bad time. And it's not even the bad times they're having in physical reality due to various violence and natural disasters and just these types of things. But they're having a bad time in their head. As an American and as a man, I've told my story, as far as the different issues I've had, with aggressive thoughts of self-deletion, horrific anxiety, bipolar episodes, going, way too manic and getting super duper depressed and being labeled, schizotypal thought and all these various types of things. I've had a lot of mental health issues, addiction, drugs, alcohol, sex addictions and various things of this nature. And it's by recognizing truth, again, holistically, that you can free yourself from the prisons or from the prison of that mental anguish. And when you free yourself from the prison of the mental anguish, you can help others free themselves from the mental anguish. And when one is freed from mental anguish, that's exactly what they want to do. They want to share what they have found because they found treasure, right? They found gold. And that may not be the thing they want to do. Maybe somebody wants to hoard the gold. Me personally, I want to share gold. I want to bless everyone, right? I like material things, don't get me wrong. I love nice, soft, cushy, plush pillows. I like, silk sheets. I like all the good stuff in life. But I've intentionally chosen for this period of time to live a very minimal life in pretty abstract poverty, abject, that's the word I was looking for, poverty. I live in a tiny studio apartment. I don't know, 250 square feet, give or take, something like that. I drive a 20-year-old Honda Civic. Okay. Now, do I need to, live in this apartment? Do I need to drive that car? Do I need to only buy clothes from thrift stores? No, but I do. because that way I can give generously. I can bless people's lives. And to me, that is way more rewarding than looking the sharpest I can possibly look, or, having all these fancy things that can just make my ego feel good and all that type of stuff. Because here's the deal. Your ego is developed in order to protect you so that you can survive. Because the reality is that, again, across these planes of existence, got to stretch the knee out. Okay, so across these planes of existence, we've got, let's talk consciousness. Let me take a quick step back. Consciousness. Consciousness is the creative force of the universe. God is consciousness. Consciousness is God. It's light, okay? Depending on which perspective you want to look at things. And our brains are the material aspect of that. The brain is the hardware, and the mind is the software, okay? So the mind is the software that allows you to move between the material, the spiritual, and integrate them together. Now, when we're born, we don't get explicitly told, how to write that software for ourselves. And we're sort of open source. People can very easily write programs that run in the background of our subconscious for long periods of our life. Maybe you think you're ugly or dumb or unworthy of love or respect because of how your parents treated you, or what teachers said, or what peers did to you, or coworkers, or various experiences that you may have had, various traumas that you may have gone through. You may have these programs running in you. Those programs are not you, okay? And your mind can always be updated. And it can also be enhanced because you are the software developer. You don't have to keep it entirely, allow anyone to edit it, right? Now, how do you get the firewall installed? How do you get the antivirus software installed so that you can remove the faulty programming? Well, it's probably a topic for another video. And we're going to get into a whole lot of depth. But as I'm looking at it here, we're sitting at about 30 minutes. Probably a good time to call the video a close. I hope this is a good first chat that we have as far as me stepping into this new direction. Obviously, if you like the video, do what you do. If you don't, that's cool too. I'm not trying to change or convince anyone's mind about anything that I talk about. I'm just trying to share some thoughts, spark some conversation, and see if we can't get this human species to maybe get along with each other. Because the reality is, all of us want peace on earth, but in order to have peace on earth, we need peace within ourselves. It's impossible to have a peaceful world through aggression. You can't force it because that's not peaceful, right? So in order to have a world of peace, you need to embody peace. So that being said, we'll leave it there. Again, my name is Christopher. I love you. I appreciate you. And we will see you next time. Peace.